We left him at Jake's cabin, propped up on a bunk with Salome, feeding him spoon vittles and whiskey, and me and Gooseneck headed for Yeller Dog, which warn't hardly a mile from there. Gooseneck says to me, "We won't say nothing about Snake River being at Jake's shack. Bull Hawkins is sweet on Salome, and he's so dern jealous minded it makes him mad for another man to even stop there to say hello to the folks. We don't want nothing to interfere with our show." "You act like you got a lot of confidence in it," I says. "I banks on it heavy," says he. "It's a symbol of civilization." Well, just as we come into town, we met Mule McGrath with fire in his eye and corn juice on his breath. "Gooseneck, listen," says he. "I just got wind of a plot of Hawkins and Jack Clanton to get a lot of our voters so drunk election day they won't be able to get to the polls. Let's call off the spelling match and go over the Red Tomahawk and clean out that rat nest." "Nah," says Gooseneck. "We promised the mob a show and we keeps our word. Don't worry, I'll think of a way to circumvent the heathen." Mule headed back for the Silver Saddle, shaking his head, and Gooseneck sat down on the edge of a hoss trough and thunk deeply. I'd begun to think he'd draft off to sleep when he riz up and said, "Breck, get hold of Soapy Jackson and tell him to sneak out of camp and stay hid till the morning of the 11th. Then he's to ride in just before the polls open and spread the news that they has been a big gold strike over in Wild Ross Gulch. A lot of fellers'll stampede for there without waiting to vote. Meanwhile, you'll have circulated amongst the men you know are going to vote for me and let 'em know we are going to work this campaign strategy. With all my men in camp and most of Bull's heading for Wild Ross Gulch, right and justice triumphs and I win." So I went and found Soapy and told him what Gooseneck said, and on the strength of it he immediately headed for the Silver Saddle and began guzzling on campaign credit. I felt it was my duty to go along with him and see he didn't get so full he forgot what he was supposed to do, and we was putting down the 6th dram apiece when in come Jack McDonald, Jim Leary, and Tarantula Allison, all Hawkins men. Soapy focused his wandering eyes on 'em and says, "Who's this here cluttering up the scenery? Why'n't you mavericks stay over to the Red Tomahawk where you belong?" "It's a free country," asserted Jack McDonald. "What about this here derned spelling match Gooseneck's bragging about all over town?" "Well, what about it?" I demanded, hitching my harness forward. "The political foe don't live which can beard a Elkins in his lair." "We demands to know who conducts it," stated Leary. "At least half the men in camp eligible to compete is in our crowd. We demands fair play." "We're bringing in a cultured gent from another town," I says coldly. "Who?" demanded Allison. "None of your dang business," trumpeted Soapy, which gets delusions of valor when he's full of liquor. "As a champion of progress and civic pride, I challenges the skunk-odored forces of corrupt politics and—" Bam! McDonald swung with a billiard ball and Soapy kissed the sawdust. "Now look what you done," I says peevishly. "If you coyotes can't act like gents, you'll oblige me by getting to hell out of here. If you don't like our company, suppose you tries to put us out," they challenged. So when I finished my drink, I taken their weapons away from 'em and throwed 'em head first out the side door. How was I to know somebody had just put up a new cast iron hitching rack out there? Their friends carried 'em over to the Red Tomahawk to sew up their sculps, and I went back into the silver saddle to see if Soapy had come to yet. Just as I reached the door, he come weaving out, muttering in his whiskers and waving his six-shooter. "Do you remember what all I told you?" I demanded. "Some of it," he goggled, with his glassy eyes wobbling in all directions. "Well, get going then," I urged, and helped him up onto his hoss. He left town at full speed, with both feet out of the stirrups and both arms around the hoss's neck. "Drink is a curse and a delusion," I told the barkeep in disgust. "Look at that sickening example and take warning. Give me a bottle of rye." Well, Gooseneck done a good job of advertising the show. By the middle of the next afternoon, men was pouring into town from claims all up and down the creek. Half an hour before the match was sought to begin, the hall was full. The benches was moved back from the front part, leaving a space clear all the way across the hall. There had been a lot of argument about who was to compete and who was to choose sides, but when it was finally settled, as satisfactory as anything ever was settled in Yaller Dog, they was 20 men to compete, and Lobo Harrison and Jack Clanton was to choose up. By a peculiar coincidence, half of that 20 men was goosenecks, and half was bulls. So naturally Lobo choosed his pals, and Clanton choosed his'n. "I don't like this," Gooseneck whispered to me. "I'd ruther they'd been mixed up. This is beginning to look like a contest between my gang and Bull's. If they win, it's going to make me look cheap. Where the hell is Snake River?" "I ain't seen him," I said. "You ought to have made 'em take off their guns." "Shucks," says he. "What could possibly stir up trouble at such a ladylike affair as a spelling bee? Dang it, where is Snake River? Old Jake said he'd get him here on time." "Hey, Gooseneck!" yelled Bull Hawkins from where he sat amongst his cohorts. "Why don't you start the show?" Bull was a big, broad-shouldered hombre with black mustaches like a walrus. The crowd began to holler and cuss and stomp their feet, and this pleased Bull very much. "Keep 'em amused," hissed Gooseneck. "I'll go look for Snake River." He snuck out a side door, and I riz up and addressed the throng. "Gents," I said, "be patient. They is a slight delay, but it won't be long. Meantime, I'll be glad to entertain you all to the best of my ability. Would you like to hear me sing Barbary Allen?" "No, by grab!" they answered in one beller. "Why, you're going to!" I roared, infuriated by this callous lack of the finer feelings. "I will now sing," I says, drawing my 45s, "and I blows the brains out of the first coyote which tries to interrupt me." I then sung my song without interference, and when I was through I bowed and waited for the applause. But all I heard was Lobo Harrison saying, "Imagine what the poor wolves on Bear Creek has to put up with." This cut me to the quick, but before I could make a suitable reply, Gooseneck slid in, breathing heavy. "I can't find Snake River," he hissed, "but the barkeep give me a book he found somewheres. Most of the leaves is tore out, but there's plenty left. I've marked some of the longest words, Breck. You can read good enough to give 'em out. You got to. If we don't start the show right away, this mob'll wreck the place. You're the only man not in the match which can even read a little, outside of me and Bull. It wouldn't look right for me to do it, and I sure ain't going to let Bull run my show." I knew I was licked. "Ah, well, all right," I said. "I might 'a' knew I'd be the goat. Gimme the book." "Here it is," he said. "The Adventures of a French Countess. Be darn sure you don't give out no words except them I marked." "Hey!" bawled Jack Clanton. We're getting tired standing up here. Open the ball." "All right," I said.